and a second.
I'm sorry, Katie. I don't think we have a quorum if we don't have a Board of Ed member, so we may want to postpone this vote.
Oh, good call. I'll text Galen now. Okay, so let's move on so we're not keeping people waiting. And if I forget, someone please remind me to go back to that if Galen comes. But why don't we move on to item number 2? And I know Joe is here. And so we can get started with coastal resiliency. And Galen is here. He just needs to be let in. Here he is.
Yeah. Hi, Katie. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So I make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Okay. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion or amendments, corrections? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Should I
motion
abstain since I wasn't
carries. Yes,
on the committee yet?
sure.
Actually,
okay,
as the public, we don't get to vote. We're just
you.
here.
but
Listen.
important nonetheless. Okay, so now without further ado, we will move on to the coastal resiliency.
So I believe John is here to discuss.
Yes, thank you. So I have the agenda. It's basically in alphabetical order, these items here. I don't know what format exactly we're going to do tonight, but if you'd like, I can go through these items here, just take them from the top, if that's makes sense.
That would be great, John, not Joe. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't know if there was a Joe on the call.
John, I think we have you for coastal resiliency first. Correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. On this agenda, coastal resiliency is first. These are just in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Yeah. So this item is, as you may know, there's a coastal resiliency fund now, and one of the items that was identified as a high priority as far as coastal resiliency by the Coastal Resiliency Commission is the area of Middle Beach Road and Island Avenue, which experiences frequent flooding there now, and so, or periodically, during storm events. And so what we have here is there's $100,000 proposed for 22-23 for planning money, and that's to look at this area. It's basically inadequate drainage system in order to convey the stormwater in this area, and water backs up with offshore storms or high rainfall. So it was identified as a high priority area. The road gets closed periodically, probably once or twice a year. And then 2 years from then would be 24-25. $500,000 was identified for construction, for improvements of drainage in this area that would alleviate flooding there. And that number, it's really just not based on much of anything other than my knowledge of the site and kind of the scope of work that this might entail, but we won't really know what costs are until there's some preliminary engineering done.
John, this proposed improvements, how long do you think this will be an effective measure? I sit on I'm the liaison to the Coastal Resiliency Commission, and as they look ahead and they see the frequency of storms increasing and sea level sea levels rising. They keep, the commission keeps talking amongst themselves about just how foolish are we as human beings to invest a lot in something that inevitably is going to be inadequate. And I don't know whether I'm saying that well, but I'm trying to get a fix on this particular improvement. How long do you think it will be effective?
Well, yeah, and I know what you're saying, Al, is that there's a lot of uncertainty here, and the state is talking about, they set a level of anticipated 20 inches of sea level rise by 2050. I don't think we really know what that's going to look like yet, but so that's as far as this specific project. Really, this is an issue of inadequate drainage. And if you look at the storm drainage out there, it's not adequate to convey the flow during what should be a typical design storm. So there's a couple of things going on here. It's inadequate drainage to convey the stormwater out, and it backs up into the intersections. But also it has an outfall, which is really insufficient in that the outfall is over behind the Madison Beach Club, and it's just the top of the pipe is visible at low tide. It's buried in the sand, so it's a combination of issues here. It's both drainage. I don't want to get too detailed, but a drainage issue and sea level, essentially. So I think improvements can be made with this to improve the drainage infrastructure through there, all the way back behind the tennis courts up on Tuxas Road, down through across Island Avenue and across Middle Beach West out to the outfall at the beach. That any sort of improvement to that conveyance system is going to be around a long time, I think, as far as the improvement. I don't think it's not wasted. It's not foolishly spent funds, I don't believe at all. It's something that is really needed now.
That's very helpful, John. What criteria are you going to be suggesting to us over the years as to how do we evaluate these kinds of projects? I'm pretty sure you know how to solve today's problem. How do we think about solving tomorrow's problems that we think are inevitably coming? Do we need to take that into account now as we're designing this solution for today's problem? Should we be thinking about whether this is also the right step in terms of a longer term view?
I think absolutely sea level rise in general needs to be considered in any planning and design process. So, I don't know the answer in terms of specific criteria that needs to be looked at, but engineering consultants that do this kind of work are already considering sea level rise in aspects like that in their design work. I think a lot of the stuff, if you look at the Coastal Resiliency Commission study, I guess, that was done, is very broad brush, looking at very, not specific solutions, but, where areas need to be, perhaps roads need to be elevated, or, properties need to be elevated. They need to be thinking about very, very big picture. How is really society going to respond to the sea level rise? But, I think I couldn't tell you what the criteria is specifically, but this project in particular, I think, is a practical project that is related. It's very much related to coastal resiliency because it has an outfall that's buried in the sand right now. And, but yet it's infrastructure that's needed now for this area. And it's, I think.
I don't want to monopolize this conversation,
Yeah.
John. It might be helpful if you walked us through the document on page 130 and helped us understand, I guess, the criteria that were used for priority and time, those two columns over on the right-hand side.
If I could just interject a little bit, Al, I don't think this is John's document. I think this is the commission's
Yeah,
document.
but I think we need to understand it. And I guess I'm not sure I do.
Right, I think this, and you know, I've read this, I've reviewed this stuff, and it's probably something that the commission, the Coastal Resiliency Commission, would need to go through and sort of explain, you know, maybe do a presentation on what these items mean. But you know, I think these are just, this is identifying problem areas. That's to me, that's what this is the main emphasis is where are the problem areas, and it kind of prioritizes how severe they are, and are they short-term, medium-term, or long-term projects. And some of these are, you know, are very long-term in terms of, you know, elevating properties and elevating roads and things like that.
Just to interject, I mean, I think that the Coastal Resiliency Commission is actually going to be developing a new plan. You know, the one that was done in 2015 was obviously, you know, the first cut at it and more broad brushed. And I think the idea is taking it to another level. And they've started, I think they've started that process of where they're going to hire a consultant again to do a deeper dive. And one of the reasons was so that we could have specific projects that we could go after grants because of all this federal money coming out for coastal resiliency projects. So we wanted to have like a go-to list. So this was kind of, I think, their commission's first step at creating the list, but then there'll be a further study and I think more backup to a lot of this as they move forward, which Al, you probably know this, I guess, because you do attend their meetings, right? But
I think we all need to understand it, Peggy. That's
Yeah.
what I was trying to get at.
yeah.
May I just add, Al, I think you were asking about if we're putting good money after bad, these short-term solutions, but of course it's a quality of life issue too. I did not really taken a good look at the study that was done. I will. And I don't know if strategic retreat was part of it. I know it's very controversial, but I think that you start talking about better drainage and elevation of roads before you ever get there. And I think that's what we're trying to do here.
I think also just in my 2 years of experiencing weather events, that area constantly floods. And one of the exercises that John and his team is starting to do is document the floodplain areas or flood prone areas so we can have a better handle on how often and how frequent, you know, because I think that historically there was always just a couple of areas that were problems. This was one of them. But the frequency of the storms and the, you know, have just made it even worse. And you know, this was one that just seemed to be like a no-brainer because of also he could identify just problems with the drainage system. You know, it's antiquated and it's not really functioning the way it's supposed to be functioning.
Joan, you've had your hand patiently up. Do you have a question or comment?
Yes, John, I think for the public's sake, if you can tell us that for the $100,000, what will come out of this? Will there be documents that can then be used to go out to bid for the actual project? What's the detail that will come in?
What I'm envisioning now is using a portion of that to do some like an initial step, sort of a feasibility study to analyze the problem. You know, I have a sense of what the problem is. I haven't seen that and observed that area, but not taking that 100,000 and going out to a consultant and say design something. I think it's got to be taken in steps, and the initial step is study it and you know, narrow down on the scope of work and what really makes sense there, and then go to a phase 2, a second phase to come up with a real scope of work and a design, and you know, and have some real costs associated with it.
Okay,
Which
thank you.
is why those outer year numbers you were saying are really just placeholder at this point.
Essentially, that's a good word for it. It's a placeholder. It's based on some experience as well. So it's not just throwing a dart here, but it's sort of a ballpark.
And John, may I ask, the $100,000 for what you have planned for this planning money and feasibility study is adequate?
I think it is certainly for the feasibility study portion of it. I think that gets you a lot of analysis from that 100,000 to analyze the problem and come up with sort of a conceptual designs here. I think it is. For as far as final hard design, I'm not sure yet until this is looked at a little more.
Justin, you have your hand patiently raised too.
John, there's two basic questions. I live near the beach club, so I see that flooding. But do we know yet, and I'm not a physics major, but are we changing the location of that discharge pipe? Because it seems logical that if high tide is there covering the pipe, is water even able to discharge against, kind of working against the sea level? That's my one question. And then two, like in the interim, or maybe part of the solution, have we thought, or do we own, or have we thought of a vacuum truck that you see around sometimes, where they go around, before the storms and vacuum out the drainage? Because I do notice that after storms, that everyone's yard debris gets basically pushed onto the drains and clogs them up, which is probably a big contributor to the problem.
So your first question. Probably the drainage, I would envision the drainage improvements would essentially be in the same location. That's not to say it couldn't be, adjusted. It does function. It's a portion of the pipe, actually probably more than half of the pipe is full of sand, but it functions, it flows. A portion of it is open. And so what happens is periodically, with shifting sand and tides and so forth, the pipe periodically fills in. The sand level rises if it gets blocked, and then we discover it when we have a big rainfall event. Say we get 3 inches of rain or something, and then we see it backing up in that big tidal wetland that backs up to Windward Avenue, or whatever that is, Windward Lane, and so it does function, but then, like I said, periodically it'll block up with shifting sand, and then starts backing water up. And that when that coincides with a big storm event, that's when you see the flooding that occurs at the intersection of Island Avenue and Middle Beach West. So yeah, I would think it would probably, the solution would probably involve, maintaining that water course. I mean, historically, if you went back in time, that's where the low-lying areas are. There's a wetland. If you go up into the watershed behind the tennis courts and all that, that was all low-lying area. So that's where things naturally flow. So you wouldn't deviate from that very much. As far as the vac trucks, we send a vac truck company in once a year to clean out catch basins. And what we do now is a third of the town essentially. And so every 3 years, the basins get sucked out completely. If there's problem areas like what occurs on Middle Beach Road frequently with sand washing in, we'll also send them out to problem areas. But it's not, we don't own a truck, and it's not very cost effective to every time there's some sand in basins on Middle Beach Road to call in a company to clean those out. So we've done various things. We've done it ourselves at times, or call the company in when we have enough work, to keep them busy for a day, type of thing.
Thank you. Very helpful. Are there any other questions? Okay. So hearing none, John, I know you're later in our agenda as well. You're gonna stick around? Oh, no, wait, you're still up for the fire protection water tanks.
Right, so I'm up, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these little subsections here.
The whole night is about John.
It's John night.
It's John night.
Yes.
All right, we'll take it
And
away.
so, yes, fire protection is next. I think there's yeah, that's the sheet.
I have
This
it on
is,
page 136, is that right?
let me see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Can you guys see my screen?
Barely. Well,
Yes.
that's
Okay.
because I'm blind.
Okay.
But
Hang
yes,
on.
I do.
Yes. It's,
Or
Is that better?
That is, thank you.
So this is, you're probably well aware of what this program is. It's the fire protection water tanks are, over time, they're being installed in town in areas where we don't have a public water system. And in rural areas in North Madison primarily. So on this schedule now, there are 4 on the list. I think technically there's actually 5 tanks to be constructed. The one in the I guess 2 years prior, in 2020 fiscal year ending 2020, has not been installed yet. And then there's the one for this year, 21-22, the first item on there, Bartlett silo. And then 3 other ones over the next 5 years. This dollar figure that we have, $140,000 for a tank installation, I think is still pretty good. The last tank that was installed in, I think 2018 was Genesee, and that was, the cost of that was like $137,000. There was some it was tricky in terms of construction on that one. So I would anticipate that the cost would have been a bit high on that. So anyway, I think this is still good. The reason that a couple of these tanks have not been built yet really is the issue of acquiring a site. I think the fire department is working on acquiring sites for these. These locations that have been identified are, as I understand it from the fire department, is that they're good strategic locations for tanks to go into, but there still needs to be a site acquisition here, and this $140,000 for construction doesn't include purchasing land or anything like that. Most of these tanks have gone in various locations, like I believe land trust land on Genesee and places like that, where an agreement's been made with the property owners. So yeah, I don't know really what else to say about this. I think the program is kind of plodding along, but it's lagged a little bit here because of that issue with site acquisition.
John, do you feel it's appropriate to have the fire companies do the site acquisition, or is that something the town should step up and do?
I think it probably is to have the fire department look into acquiring sites, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that really. I think
I can say, just in terms of, it's a tricky situation because you're asking individual homeowners to basically
That's right.
offer an easement. And I think it's been problematic to get these in place. So it's taken time. I think the fire department most recently has found people who, are volunteers in their department who might be open to some of this too. So they're working on it. At one point the town can make that request. It's a tough ask. That's all. So, because unfortunately there was never any requirement made, a long time ago. to put these in place just because it wasn't something that was done. So you really are just asking people's goodwill to help their community. So it is something that we've had several conversations with the service chiefs about, and the town. I've offered to help when it makes sense for me to get involved in that discussion.
May I just ask Peggy, I understand what you're saying. Thank you. It's a tough ask, but we're talking safety here. And I'm just thinking of the people that are on Bartlett and Silo, if they were aware that there's no tank up there. And if there was a tank, they'd have a better chance of their houses being, preserved. So I wonder if we as selectmen maybe try to get that word out somehow. I don't know how, on how important this is. You might find neighborhoods working together to find a location just to bring some safety to their community, their area.
I think that's fair, Noreen. I can tell you, being a resident of Bartlett Drive, we had to use one of the tanks, the one that's on Woodsvale, a few years ago when there was a fire. And so it was super important to have it, as a safety thing.
But I'm wondering, Katie, if people understood it's a safety thing. It's a tough ask. Peggy's exactly right about people with the private property, but I wonder if people were aware of how much safer their homes would be, or their neighbors' homes would be, if we worked together on this, and if they had the right piece of property that wouldn't, take away from the value of their homes.
I think it's one of those things that, could there be kind of a mass communication that would go out to certain neighborhoods that we're seeking, the town is seeking, people because of these safety issues. I mean, it's not a bad thought. If anything, just a letter explaining the situation, and it might, the fire company's gone around and identified properties too that they thought would be really good locations. And I think so. But yeah, what you're saying, it's right. I mean, I think it's one of those things that I don't think there's a lot of awareness.
No, exactly. And Peggy, I wonder if there's actually an insurance advantage to someone having this near their house.
There is, from what I recall, and I was just trying to think. We did talk about that, but I don't know all the details. But yes, I think there is some sort of benefit as well. So. It's a good thought. I mean, and I can certainly talk to the service chiefs and say, well, what if we just, took a couple streets and did a really good letter and sent it out, so people or make them aware, even if no one responds or no one's interested, at least now we've kind of highlighted the issue.
Galen, you have your hand up, another resident of Bartlett Drive. Are you volunteering as tribute?
Well, if you could dig through the granite ledge, sure. But I just have a basic question. These are underground tanks?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a fire protection water storage tank on Podunk Road, not too far from Bartlett, but it's on the Guilford side. Is there any, is that available? Obviously, if there's a fire, or what's the policy there?
I don't know if there's any sharing. That's a good question for, probably North Madison Fire Department would know.
Yeah, I'd have to know. Yeah, I think we'd have to ask that question. I'm sure there's all kinds of mutual aid arrangements that so I can't even imagine where they're like, no, you can't touch our water. But
right.
There's also only a certain distance from these tanks, gets into the physics, right, of the water and everything. So that might serve part of Bartlett already. And then there's a whole nother area because Bartlett's very long. So I don't know all the ins and outs of this, to be honest.
Okay, good. Thank you.
John, just a crazy thought came into my head as we're talking and listening. How long do these tanks last? Because has the thought of ever been burying them within the roadway, which is town property?
The possibility of burying them in the roadway, is that?
Yeah, so it's not technically on anyone's individual property, but still, near the curb and accessible.
Yes.
You don't turn up the road every 5 years, but my impression was
Right.
these are down there for quite a long time.
Right, yeah, and they last a long time. The problem is that the size of them, they're really larger, like a 10-foot diameter tank, cylindrical tank by, I forget how, like 50 feet long or something like that. And the way the way they're designed is they're off the road enough just to physically fit the tank in there, and they are below ground, but they're the ground over the tank is mounded up with sort of a retaining wall in the front for the connection, the hose connections. So the way it works is the fire truck, fire apparatus pulls right up to the tank and goes over to the shoulder and connects to these connections, which then draw water from the tank. I don't think there's physically room to fit within the roadway in most cases, unless there's a real wide section of right of way. And, you know, that may be the case in certain areas, like there's one at this circle at Route 80 and 79, which is probably, you know, I don't know for sure, but I know it's probably within the state right of way there, but I don't know that for sure. But if that's basically the problem, is physical dimensions of the tank.
Yeah, it's the actual pipes coming up for the hookup. It's not the tank itself. It's those pipes have to sit above, and they're probably a good, I think, 3 to 4 feet above road level so that they can hook right into the fire tanks. You can see it, you know, there's one at the country school as well. There's a bump up, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I'm assuming that could run horizontal for some distance before coming out of the ground. As I said earlier, I didn't major in physics, so I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
Any other questions about the fire protection water tanks? Okay. Next on the agenda for John Knight is highway equipment.
Yes, so make sure I have the same page that, okay. So the highway equipment, the commission's aware here, I'm sure, is this is all based on the fleet study that was completed in 2020. And, you know, the highway vehicles have fallen behind and kind of in disrepair and in major need of upgrading many vehicles. And so the fleet study identified actually 31 vehicles that needed to be replaced within the next 5 years. This was when the study came out in 2020. And the committee and the town looked at this. So I may have said this, the fleet study identified 21 of those vehicles ideally to be replaced in year one, just based on mileage and age of the vehicle. What we looked at doing essentially was spreading out those vehicles to make the purchases of the 31 vehicles over a 5-year time to sort of spread that cost out. And so that's what we've done. We've come up with a schedule, and the finance department has come up with this sort of lease purchase plan in order to finance all these vehicles over 5 years. We're already into the first year since that study came out, which involved replacing 3 of our large dump trucks and 1 medium-sized truck. We're in the process of doing that now. Actually, we've ordered those vehicles. The 3 dump trucks, unfortunately, have been delayed in terms of getting them delivered to the town, but they are up in Hartford right now at Freightliner being built. And one of them, every week we're told you're going to get it any day now. So they're being constructed. We're limping along with what we have. When we get these 3 vehicles, which will happen within a matter of weeks, we're going to be in much better shape. But I think this plan is workable as is. I don't, there aren't any changes proposed from last year, from when this was really all set up.
Are the dump trucks also plows? Yes,
they're the plows, the large plows that you see on the road are those Freightliner vehicles. You know, they're $200,000 a piece with the body and all that. Purchased off the state bid, you know, so we're getting a good price, but they're costly.
I think that study really made this a lot clearer and easier to understand and actually plan for too. So I'm glad it's made that a lot easier.
Katie, may I just ask a question? And I don't know if this is for John or Stacy. Page 142, when I look at 21, 22 that we're in now, and I look at the special appropriation of 606, that special appropriation was made in 21, I assume. But where was the balance of that reserve fund prior to that? Or was that reserve fund empty when we put that special appropriation in there? Because don't we carry a balance forward on these reserve funds?
We do. I don't have that right now, Noreen. I can get it, but
Well,
in
well,
order. Oh, go
Let
ahead.
me just finish. But with the number that running capital budget balance, is that accurate then?
Yes,
Is it-
well, that's with the 606 that we put in there, so we'd have to back
Right.
that out. But in order to
Right.
make these purchases, we had to infuse those funds.
Right, I get that, I say, of course. But was there anything from 2020 that it was the reserve fund empty when you put the special
No.
program in this year? So
No,
where-
what we had to do is we had to relook at the entire fund and look at the balance and look at what the study came out with when he came out with a $1.9 million of replacements. John went back and reprioritized his items because obviously we couldn't replace $2 million worth of vehicles right away. So that's when we kind of backed in based on John's priorities of what we needed to infuse into the fund. It was not at a zero level, but the study really opened our eyes on what we had to do to move forward.
and
So
I think-
looking
I think- Go ahead,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Jen.
looking at last year's capital improvement program, had the original plan been put forth, which would have been adding in 235,000, but netting out about the same amount of money, it would have left a $1,235.
That would have been the balance?
Yeah, had
Okay.
the.
I just
and
wanted to know where that was. I was wondering where that was. Okay, thank
I
you.
still have last year's.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, it was just all the, $2 million of equipment. We had to relook at the entire plan and reprioritize everything and figure out what we can do as soon as possible.
Laura has a question. Thank you.
Yeah, John, you said that there were 31 vehicles that needed to be replaced over the 5 years. How many vehicles do you have?
I know we have 100 license plates, but there are gaps there too. So
Just curious. I mean,
yeah,
That's close enough.
I don't
Thank
know the
you.
exact number. I'm thinking about this. So
Kristen is looking right now as you speak.
The 100 license plates includes that.
yeah,
We'll get that to you, but this is a listing of the 31 vehicles that were identified to be replaced immediately.
And that's on page 148 of our book.
Correct.
There's 50 vehicles on this.
So Kristen's looking at a list that has about 50 vehicles. I'm sure the plates that John's talking about also includes the police vehicles. And
Right,
then
and
ones
there-
that are not being used, I don't know. But the
Yeah.
list that we're working with as far in regards to the replacement schedule is about 50 vehicles.
That's not.
There, there are trailers and things like that with plates as well that are not on this list. They're small, low cost compared to this stuff. But yeah, it strikes me that the 31 is probably, half the fleet over the next 5 years. Just very ballpark.
Right.
I have to say that Ford pickup really put in some time, huh? 27 years.
That
Good
was
maintenance schedule.
that was actually donated to Public Works for free by I believe it was North Madison Fire. It's a diesel vehicle, so we've actually got a lot of use out of it. Didn't cost us anything, but it's part of our fleet now, and we need it.
Yep.
So
John, is a riding lawnmower considered a vehicle?
yeah, yes. The highway account also considers vehicle, like off-road vehicles, lawn equipment, and like our front wheel loader and backhoe and excavator.
Okay.
And things like that are also on this list, over like a certain dollar threshold. So a $10,000 walk behind mower or sit down motor even is not on here, but anything over a certain level is on this list.
John, do these vehicles have any real trade-in value? Anything meaningful?
They do, but they'll have more trade-in value once we get into a better cycle where we're replacing these on a 10-year cycle or 100,000 miles. They'll be in better shape and they'll have more value. A lot of these are so old, even the dump trucks are in very poor condition, and these Sterlings are actually obsolete. They're not manufacturing these anymore. So there's not a lot of value, a few $1,000s, maybe $5,000, $10,000 for our large dump trucks when we trade them in or auction them.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay. So next on the agenda is John again with major roads.
So major roads, similar to the highway equipment, this major roads plan is really a continuation from last year's plan. I've not really made a lot of adjustments, other than we have two bridges. We anticipated this last year. We have two bridges that are going to be under construction soon, and that we received grants for. That's Garnet Park Road Bridge and Flintlock Road Bridge. Those have been incorporated into this 5-year plan now. So you can see in year 22, 23, it's a little bit of a down year because of these bridges. And this fund is intended to be for road construction and bridges as well. So unfortunately, we have two bridges that are going to be under construction. 4 in total. These are 2 new ones. We have other ones that are funded already. Heatherwood and County Road. But my point is that in year 22, 23, there's a little bit of a down year as far as paving money from this account. And then as in the next 4 years, it's a very aggressive paving schedule.
And John, is that, I don't know a lot about paving, but is that the millwork or is that the full-on paving?
These costs are, it's not identified here, but it's for milling and paving primarily. Some of the roads that are in worse condition are for reclamation of the roads, which is a little more involved than milling and paving. It's actually really reclaiming the old pavement, pulverizing it, regrading it, compacting it, and all that. So it's more of a reconstruction. So this roads on this list include milling and paving, or essentially a reconstruction type of treatment.
John, do you want me to talk a little bit about what we chatted about?
Sure.
So one of the things, we have a paving account that's not in CIP, that's kind of steady, I think, every year. And then we have this major roads where the balance swings heavily to bridges projects when we were bridge heavy. And then, the balance goes to paving. So what happens is we don't have a consistent paving schedule every year. And so when you have a lot of bridges coming up, which we do, and we were able to get grants for these and everything else, it still eats up a lot of the money out of this account. And so it means that we're going to be paving less. And so what we did last year is we actually infused some money into this account so we could still keep up with our paving schedule. Because the more if we do less for a year or two, then it just pushes everything out, right? So it delays again, and then the roads get in worse condition, and then it's going to cost us more money. So one thought we had is doing what we did last year because of the fund balance, and putting in another infusion in this account so we can sustain the same level of paving every year, spend the same amount of money consistently every year on paving. Because right now it kind of moves around depending on what happens with the bridges. I think in the long run, I almost want to strip out bridges separately, because those are just totally different capital projects, and just have, one, and I know there's reasons for this, because sometimes he needs flexibility, and that's a debate to be discussed later, I think, because John's thought a lot about this, but so that's something that I thought of, talking about at the Board of Selectmen level, like we did last time, where the board made recommendations of using fund balance to, but if that's something your committee wanted to recommend, you could do that, or you could just leave it to us to talk about at the Board of Selectmen level when we go through CIP. And it would, it wouldn't change the funding in terms of the budget, but it just addresses this issue, because I think our roads personally we're behind. They're not great. They're getting better. And John spent a lot of time. He follows, we just updated our pavement study, and we've seen an improvement in our overall quality of our roads. But I think we all agree that, the more we can continue to pave and improve paving, the better, because it saves us really money in the long run. It's better to be ahead of it than to let the roads deteriorate where it starts costing you a lot more money to repair the roads. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It could be just something you'll defer to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance ultimately on this. But just want to kind of throw it out there again as a thought.
Peggy, did the grants totally cover the bridge replacements?
The two new bridges, go ahead.
Well, the details better, but no, they're only partially funded, right?
Right, that's right. They're 50%. These are state, local bridge. This is the two new ones, Flintlock and Garnet Park, are 50% funded by the grant money, and that includes construction and design.
I have a question for Stacy. Are you with us, Stacy?
I am, Al.
Stacy, not that many years ago, the Board of Selectmen had an awfully lively policy discussion about whether this list can be amended mid-year depending on a variety of factors. And we got ourselves well tied up in a knot over that question. Did the Board of Finance or anybody else ever resolve that?
They did. They actually provided John with more flexibility as far as moving roads around as needed, because there's surprises that come up, as well as cost changes. So they did provide John with more flexibility in this fund.
I see. And is John allowed to move up and down this list, or can John actually substitute another road entirely that isn't on here?
Pretty much, John could do what he needs to do to keep the roads where they need to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the big thing back then, Al, was we used to print in the legal notice the
Exactly.
actual roads.
Yep.
And then we decided to opt out of that. So that would leave John, the ability to manage the roads as he sees fit.
Oh, we've exhibited such wisdom. Thank you.
One thing I'd like to say is that since the latest pavement study, we've gotten a better handle on a 5-year paving plan. And so because I don't want to be juggling roads, that becomes a problem. People get wind that their road is being paved and then it gets pulled from the list for whatever reason. So it's problematic, but I anticipate less of that because this list I think is pretty good. But then every spring we reevaluate and they wear at different rates. Or there's some other strategic reason where we can't do a certain road. And I'll give you an example. Neck Road, the water company put a water main in, so we took advantage of the fact that they had to restore the road and funded a good portion of that. So Neck Road was inserted into the list. It needed to be repaved anyway, but we were able to move it up. So there's reasons every year that we may have to shuffle things around.
Any other questions?
May I just, well, first of all, I think that flexibility is key because it's also common sense, but it's safety. If you have an issue on a road that's not on the list and it needs to be done because of safety reasons, I'm glad we can have our professionals make that decision. The other 2 bridges you kept referring to, they're not on this list. Is this something we've done already or something we're going to get?
So
bridges.
Yes, the other 2 bridges are County Road and Heatherwood. County Road's not on the list. Heatherwood is like 5 lines down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. County Road is out to construction now. There's a contractor selected, and they've actually started some preliminary work.
Okay.
And Heatherwood is still on. Heatherwood is behind County Road. I think that's probably why it's on the list. I believe that's why.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we will move on to CNRE engineering projects with John.
So a few of these are primarily in my department. What I have here is just to summarize real quick. So Madison Center, Concord Meadows to Route 1's sidewalk, a shared use path from downtown to Surf Club, and a garage building for the dump loader at our landfill facility, our transfer station. So I could start with I guess Madison Center. Phase 1 is on.
John, excuse me, what page are you on?
I'm on page 35.
Thank you.
This is just a summary, the summary sheet.
I have 35 up, Noreen as well.
Okay, yeah. So I get phase one of Madison Center is really 2021-22, which is, it's essentially underway. It's getting started. There's some things that need to be finalized. But that involves the relocation of the utilities underground. And phase two, which is in 2023-24, involves the extension of the downtown center streetscape work, which, as we know, ends at the fire station now. This would extend that to all the way to Route 79. So I don't know how much detail or you want me to go into here.
Is it on the north side or north and south side, that extension?
The extension it's really on the, I guess I would say, the west side
West side, yeah.
of Route 1, Boston Post Road. So from the firehouse to the 79 intersection, it's the median and the sidewalks on either side of the road.
Is there a thought to do the east side as well?
I think one of the thoughts on this is so in 2023-24, the 200,000 is planning money, essentially, because it needs to be designed. And one of the thoughts on this is that we would take a sort of a comprehensive look at the center, and if there's any, sort of modifications that are appropriate as part of the extension of the median and the sidewalk work, that might be a time to do that, to look at that. I know there's been discussions about mid-block crosswalks, and should those be implemented down there?
Yeah, I mean, this is basically trying to relook at what was the original vision for the downtown center project, and knowing that it got re-engineered and kind of shrunk down because of the budget, which I know you're all familiar with. The idea is, let's step back now. Now we know where we are. We're looking at connectivity, with different pathways from West Wharf to downtown. We want crosswalks. Let's look at that whole piece there and come up with it like a new plan, really, for that. So I think this was kind of try to hit a reset, knowing where we are today, and then develop a new plan. So there's no commitments to what would be in this right now.
Got it. So it's more like trying to figure out how we extend all the way to 79 potentially on both sides and what's going on. Okay. Thank you.
I may ask a question. John, the last grant we got was with Texas Walkway and everything, bringing the railroad station to Route 1. Is that completed? Is that all done?
That is completed. Texas Walk and Bradley Road
is all done. Okay.
Yes, correct.
And that was a grant. That was mostly. I think we did get a grant for that.
That was a $600,000 grant, 400,000 for Texas Walk and 200,000 for Bradley Road.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I kind of remember, but I just never remember if the construction actually happened.
Yep. Yes.
Of course, it would help if I looked.
It's beautiful.
John, I walk that loop a lot. Am I mistaken? It kind of looks like the north side is complete beyond the firehouse, I think, correct? So what more would actually need to be done? I know the median kind of has lines where I guess maybe there would be, the pavers would continue for the median, but in terms of the sidewalks, what more is actually left to be done?
Probably not a lot in terms of the sidewalk. The sidewalk does extend across the frontage of the firehouse and terminates there, right where I guess that's right where Cumberland Farms is. So it would be It would extend from there all the way to the intersection, and I don't know what that would look like, the final product there, I guess, but it's
okay.
Fairly minor. I think it's more about the median.
Right.
And I also think
I asked about this last year, so just to confirm for me and for others who weren't here last year, that median, you kind of see the outlines where the lines are drawn on the road, but that median, and it would not be elevated like it is in the center of town, correct? That would kind of be at grade with the road. Is that my understanding?
I believe, yes, I believe in front of the plan there is to keep that at grade in front of the firehouse so that the apparatus can get out onto the roadway. Well,
I was thinking more importantly that people could turn left into Cumbie's Coffee, but I hear you.
Well, that's a good question. It's such a busy area. Yeah, I don't know what and that's what I said. I don't know what that final look will be, until it's really.
Because honestly, like one area that seems in need of improvement, and I don't know if it's private or public, who would pay for it, but the south side from actually beyond 79 to like from Wells Fargo to the top of Island Avenue, that sidewalk is kind of, in shambles really. And obviously the north side is there, but if, just thinking if Academy goes forward and everything, that might be worth looking at as part of the scope. I don't know if that is part of it or what the thoughts are.
I think the whole area. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's the whole. I mean, the idea is to look at the whole thing and come up with a plan all the way to West Wharf.
Okay.
And then this piece is partly to just complete what had been talked about completed. But then, the overall plan would be all the way to West Wharf, because I think there's a separate line in here for that project, right? The West Wharf.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but the idea is to have one vision for all of that connectivity. So I think we just left this as part of, because people keep asking, like, when are we going to finish the brick? Right. So, and this is a project that's been in here for a long time. So we kind of, but yes, you're right. It should be one big plan all the way.
So that if you want me to move on here, the next one I could skip over Concord Meadows for now, and the shared use path, which is the fourth item down. I know less about this. This is something that the land use and the former planner worked on, but it's essentially looking at.
That's the West Wharf.
Right, improve pedestrian access from the downtown center to the surf club. And so
is that a walking path, a bike path?
I don't know if that's known yet exactly. Yeah. It's to improve both, pedestrian and potentially bicycle access along there. But I think until that's studied and conceptualized, I don't know. It was identified as one of the highest priorities by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee in terms of need.
So John, that 160 and 25, 26, that's planning monies too.
That is plan. That's planning money is yes.
Thank you.
It's part of the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. If we look at the detail that's on page 117. Yeah, that you just brought up. Sorry. You're ahead of me.
It's interesting that this is a priority for the bicycle group. We've gone more than twice, maybe even 3 times to the state trying to get a light there. Just, because so many kids are crossing, going down to the beach, going down to football games. And it just never fits the criteria that we pushed it and we've made no inroads. Because it's a really busy section of town in the nice weather with kids going down there for all the sports and the beach and they're walking.
I think that the benefit we have now is there's a huge priority now being put on more connectivity. And that's what we're kind of angling for grants for this. And I think there might be more funding available, Noreen, for those types of, whether it's light or whatever the plan comes up with that says this is what you need to do. I think there's going to be more receptivity to that now because of the initiatives the state is taking in this area.
That's
It's a
great
big
to hear.
emphasis.
That's great to hear.
Fingers crossed for that. That'd be awesome.
So
and
the,
then- yeah,
the fourth item I had identified as in my purview, I guess, is the Concord Meadows to Route 1 sidewalk, which is the third item down. So that is a project that we have a grant for. It's in design right now. That involves a sidewalk on Woodland Avenue from Concord Meadows to Route 1, Route 79, and then down Route 79 to Route 1. It's under design. There's conceptual plans that have been developed. In fact, just talked to the consultant today about that, and we're going to be reviewing that.
So presumably, John, it would be going down the west side of 79, like
Yes.
the same side as they wouldn't have to cross up there. But then I guess there is kind of a crosswalk light at the corner of Bradley and 79, but would there be adding another one to continue south, like a crosswalk button or pole?
It's only conceptually designed right now for preliminary design, really. It's a sidewalk on 79 along the west side of the road from Woodland Avenue all the way to Route 1. And so there would be crosswalks in ADA accessibility all the way through there, if that's.
John, I'm looking at the statement of need on page 115. And there seems to be a timeline issue in there. Is that something you can speak to?
I didn't get an answer on that today, and I saw that. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't think there's a timeline issue in terms of the grant being vulnerable at all. I think we're okay there, but I don't have an answer on that yet.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions?
So I had one final project, which is all the way out in year 5 right now, that I had added to this list. And it's a need that we have at Public Works at the transfer station facility. It's a small garage building. That's with this $50,000. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed that. And is that the total cost of the garage? It can't be.
Yes, it's what it is. It's very small. It's about like a 20 by 25 or 20 by 30 foot garage, which is cold. It's not heated, and what it does is it houses our wheel loader, that our construction equipment down there, the wheel loader. It's a very expensive piece of equipment, and it will keep it out of the elements. Right now, it's in a sort of a concrete cinder block building, which is very much in disrepair. And I wanted to identify this and get this on here. Maybe ideally, I'd like to get it done sooner. And it's something I'd like to work on as far as, getting some funding for that building.
That would be, would it be a prefab kind of thing that would go up, or is that construction?
Possibly a prefab. I envisioned a metal building, a pretty low cost metal building.
Sorry about that. I had several things going on at the same time. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, I don't know, the numbers is budgetary. I think it's more than enough right now. So we'll look at a cost-effective building to put in place there. It's something that just really has one specific purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Well, if no one has any other questions, I want to thank John for your time tonight. Very
Thank you.
helpful. Come back anytime. And I will ask if there are any members of the public who have any questions.
There are none at this time.
Okay. So hearing none, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, I was gonna say, nobody wants to leave? Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All
Aye.
right. Good night, John. Thank you again
Good
for your time and
Thank you.
attention. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you as well. Thank you.
Good night.